I fell into my first relationship at around 17. It just became a toxic cycle between the both of us. About 3 or 4 years in, I fell pregnant. I ended up being alone for a period of time in my pregnancy. I didn't have the courage to go to church at that time because I actually felt ashamed and embarrassed because I fell pregnant out of wedlock. I remember just looking down at my belly and crying out to God, and I said, God, if you're real, I need you to save me. My name's Andriana and I am 32 years old. I'm married to an amazing husband and I have 5 kids, 4 being my bonus kids through the marriage and my biological daughter. And I've been on this faith journey with the Lord for about 10 years, ever since my daughter was actually in my womb. And now I'm here, ready to share my testimony. My parents, they grew up Catholic. When I was born, I was introduced to the religion of Catholicism, going to mass and private school. All I knew was the religion of showing up to church. So I didn't actually know too much about God growing up. I grew up in a very dysfunctional family with a lot of violence and abuse, and my 2 parents separated when I was 2 or 3 years old. My earliest memory was my parents actually fighting in a kitchen and glass being thrown around and me crying. And that would have been about, I would say about 3 years old, because looking back, it feels like not too long after that, they actually separated and then started the divorce. My parents grew up Catholic and they didn't really impart anything about God. It was just the religion. It became the identity in the family. It was the identity in the family through generations. Like my grandparents, identified as Catholic, and my mum and my dad identified as Catholic, and so it just got passed on to us. I did the Catholic traditions like the confirmation and the Eucharist, but I didn't really know God how I know him now. It was just a name, and I didn't know whether he existed, and I didn't know if he was real. It was just something I heard, but I always wondered as a kid whether God was real. And I would have moments where I would question and look up in the sky and just sort of wonder if there was something more, even as a young kid. So I would say through my primary school years. So there was no foundation of Christ in my family, and therefore everything that I saw was through the eyes of brokenness and trauma and just heartbreak as a little kid. So after the breakdown of my parents' marriage, it took me on a journey of having to navigate a separated household. It took me on a journey of going between 2 houses every second fortnight as my parents were battling out in court. So I would say from the preschool years to my primary years and high school years was a whole court battle. And it was just my norm that I went from one household to another. I had to deal with a lot in that time, and it was very emotionally traumatizing having to walk through divorce. As a little girl growing up with a broken home, my father not being there as what I know to be a healthy home now really impacted me, because I struggled with my relationship because of the way that he was brought up, and his upbringing impacted him to be emotionally cut off or unavailable, but present, but not really meeting and satisfying my needs as a daughter. And so my relationship with my dad, looking back at photos, there was closeness there because I was yearning for it as a little girl. But as I got older and I started going into my teen years, I was looking for his validation. I was looking for him to pour life into me. I was looking for him to validate me as his daughter and just teach me from a man's perspective what a healthy relationship looks like with another man. But unfortunately, I didn't really get that. I came against a lot of shut off emotions, or I came against just closed doors within himself. And I guess you could say that rejection came into that because of the relationship with him. He didn't know how to really fulfill what I needed as a young girl / teenager. So instead of looking for him and getting validated by him, I ended up starting my journey of looking to other men or boys and getting acceptance and attention from other boys. So I would say because of the marriage breakdown, the enemy came in to use rejection and use my father wound, because it ended up being like a father wound that impacted me, to draw me to unhealthy men and boys and just seek the validation elsewhere. And that started a cycle in my life. So throughout my life, I experienced different occasions where men would come and try and take my innocence from a young age. I was drawn to men, or was put into circumstances, not by anyone else, it's just the fact of this cycle caused me to fall into the traps of men that would deceive me, or boys that would deceive me, because I was looking for love in these wrong places. I was looking for love in relationships. I was yearning for that fatherly love from a male. So it's amazing how the enemy his goal is always to destroy and to kill relationships, to kill families, to break them apart and cause division. And because of that first happening in the early stages of my life, a big part of my journey was really struggling with relationships, particularly with the male side of things, because the head of the home, my father, wasn't in the head of the family anymore. It was completely broken and severed. When I was 15 years old, around 14 or 15, my mom met a lady who became a friend, and she actually introduced her to Christianity. And my mum ended up giving her life to the Lord when I was about that young. At the time when my mum told us that she became a Christian, I thought it was really weird, and she took us to church. I thought it was so strange, you know, everyone raising their hands up in the air, everyone clapping, everyone dancing and worshiping God like I had never seen before, and I just felt so out of place. We went on this journey of just witnessing my mom start her journey as a Christian. I felt at the time that I didn't really understand the gospel, but the one thing I do remember being there was that I always did feel peace. I felt a presence of peace, but my life never changed personally. When I would leave the church, you know, you'd go about your week and nothing changes. That's how my life was. but I knew that I enjoyed going there. I felt peaceful, and that was a feeling that I paid attention to. My mum introduced us into the youth group, and I guess from 15, 16, I got to know the youth group. I got to be part of the youth and sort of build relationships in the church, but I still felt very different. I still didn't know God. It wasn't something I really understood. I just felt like it was just a place I went to on Friday nights as a youth kid, and I just enjoyed my Friday nights. It's where I wanted to be. I fell into my first relationship at around 17, and that relationship ended up being unhealthy, and I fell into it because I was looking for the love from my father that I yearned for from my father in this man. I quickly realized over time that I wasn't getting that fulfillment, and it just became a toxic cycle between the both of us. About 3 or 4 years in, I fell pregnant at 20 with my daughter, and the relationship still continued to be unhealthy until it got to the point where I ended up being alone for a period of time in my pregnancy. And the heartache of that time, where I just felt like completely rejected, I felt abandoned, and I felt just deserted from everyone. At the time, my mum lived away and my ex was elsewhere when I was pregnant, and all I had was this pregnancy and me. When I come to this part of my story, I tend to get quite emotional because this is a part where I met God. So when I ended up being alone in this pregnancy, it was just me and my daughter in my belly. And leading up to this point, I was actually starting to have a desire to go back to church, but I was alone in that idea. And I didn't have the courage to go to church at that time because I actually felt ashamed and embarrassed because I fell pregnant out of wedlock. And I wasn't married, and I just thought that I would be condemned because I had fallen pregnant. And I thought that the church would condemn me. And so I just faced this part alone. And so one evening when I was in the middle of my pregnancy, I was completely alone. And coming up to this point, whenever I would be driving, this is my lowest point after the breakup. In this period of my pregnancy, I felt suicidal. I felt like my world ended, and I felt just my heart was physically hurting because of the relationship breakdown. And so when I would be driving, I wanted to turn the wheel. I'd see the poles, the light poles, and when I just wanted to turn the wheel and end my life. And well, because I didn't want to deal with the pain, and then the thought of a broken family, of me going through a broken family, just hurt my heart. So when I was in this moment by myself in my room, pregnant, looking at my belly, I remember just looking down at my belly and crying out to God. And I said, God, if you're real, I need you to save me. Because if you don't, I'm going to take my life. And I just cried out to God and I said,
I am at the end of myself and this is the lowest that I could go. And I just cried out. I just remember crying out to God just to save me from this relationship, save me from this brokenness, and to take the physical pain from my heart. And I just ended up crying myself to sleep that night. And just not thinking about, I didn't know if God heard me. I didn't know if He would change my life, but I was at the end of myself and my only option was God at this point. The next morning, I felt different and I felt that God completely took all my anxiety away. And the fear of my future and just all my worries just lifted. Prior to that moment, I was completely bound by anxiety and dependency on my daughter's father. And I felt just completely gripped by having no independence and just control or manipulation. And then after this encounter, it's like all of that completely left. And I started the process of growing in independence, growing in confidence, growing in breaking free from a relationship that wasn't healthy for me. And I could see that it wasn't working. So this relationship went on and off for the rest of my pregnancy. But then it came to the point where I finally was done and I completely broke that relationship off because of the fact that it was not going to work and it wasn't going to be good for me if I tried to stay or try to make it work, because my heart was already burnt and wounded and I could see it wasn't going to get better. So I thought it would be best if we separated, and I just accepted the fact that I would be single mom and co-parenting and just going with the flow from that point on. But over the years, from that very first moment, my relationship with God was like a roller coaster. It was completely up and down. And I went through relationship after relationship after relationship over the years. It would have been from 2014 when my daughter was born to 2019. Good 5 years of up and down. In that time, I ended up becoming engaged 3 times. So my third time being now that I'm married. But my very first time was my first relationship, and then I had a relationship where I ended up getting engaged again. And it was trying to find the one. Like, I was still going through this battle of finding the one, finding someone that would love me, care for me, cherish me. But in this journey of over the course of 5 years, I got to the end of myself. And this was about 2020. I got to the end of myself where I was completely done with the relationships side of things. I broke off the last relationship to surrender myself to God because I was sick and tired of failing. I was sick and tired of failing and being in this cycle, and I recognized that something had to change. Now, when 2020 hit and we came into this lockdown period, it was the very beginning of God beginning to deal with my heart and deal with things that I thought that I had dealt with, but they were just so suppressed. Now we're in lockdown. Now I'm in a house by myself and I am having to face everything that I thought I had dealt with, the realities of perhaps unforgiveness still in my heart, and just addressing the wounds that were in my heart. I decided from that lockdown period that every moment that I could spend with God, I wanted to push through and spend that time with Him, particularly in worship. I remember having my first moments after all this chaos was breaking off in the world, and I just wanted to worship God. I wanted to press in because by this point I had gone through too much, and I also wanted to encounter God in my own way for the first time, more than I ever thought I could or desired. I just wanted to break a barrier. I wanted to feel Him, experience Him, just something different that I hadn't yet experienced. And so I remember making a choice one morning to worship God and press through 4 or 5 songs. I said to myself that I'm going to worship God until I break through the wall of being comfortable and going in over that wall into whatever God has for me. And the word that I felt at the time, and I was encouraged by my amazing Thursday night leaders, Diana. She would encourage us to go deeper with God. And at this point, I was ready to try and go deeper with God. So this one morning, as I was worshiping, I sang to the Lord, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 songs. I'm pressing through, just worshiping. I wasn't expecting anything. I just wanted to worship God and get uncomfortable. And I remember I started to feel His glory fall in my house, and it was something I never experienced before. It was His tangible presence that filled the room, my whole house. And it was the beginning of God taking me deeper and showing me who He is and the power of God that I started to witness for the first time. And in this time, I started to have many encounters with God, particularly visions and dreams, but mainly visions while I was worshiping. And one of the visions that impacted me, that completely changed me, was a vision of a heart that God had showed me. So not like a love heart, but the human anatomy heart. And in that vision, He showed me there was 3 open wounds. So one on the side, one through the center that was gaping. It was big. It was like a big laceration. And then there was another one on the side, on the other side. And as I was worshiping and I had my eyes closed, seeing this before my eyes, I literally saw God just completely bind up that wound, and it just closed before my very eyes. And I knew in the pits of my spirit that was God healing my father wound. And that was the very beginning that God started to deal with that big wounds, which had caused me to fall all those years prior and through my childhood of having low self-confidence and just not being validated. He showed me that was the root of why I fell into those things and why those cycles happened in my life, and it had to do with the Father. And I remember having another vision that God brought me back to that little girl that was broken, and He began to just minister to me and validate me as His little girl. That I was sitting on His lap, and I remember just flapping around a teddy bear. It's like He brought me back to that little girl, because that's where I was hurt. That was the time where I was hurt, was that little child. So He began to minister and say, "You're so beautiful. I love you. I'm so proud of you." Everything I needed to hear from my Father, He was just speaking over me. And that was, again, in these moments that I was having with God, I would just be crying, because it was like God just restoring and healing me, and restoring me emotionally, and restoring me, healing that little girl so that I could step into the woman that He called me to be. So in that time, in 2020, 2021, God just completely, radically changed me. And I began growing and maturing with God. And I began seeing Him work in my life. This leads me to my now husband and my marriage, and how I was blessed to have my amazing husband. We actually met at our Thursday night Bible study, and at the time we were in completely different seasons of our life, and it was purely just friendship. Nothing more. There was no feelings there. I felt no feelings. It was just a friendship. I always feel like it's someone that you know that God brings you to be your husband and wife, because it always starts as a friendship foundation. And it was innocent, it was pure, it was just like, it felt like a best friend every time that I would see him. After I came to that point of complete surrender in my walk with God, I said, Lord, if whoever you have for me that is my husband, I only want the person to be from you. I don't want to go looking for them. I don't want to try anymore, because I'm tired of doing it on my own. And I said, God, even if I wait 10, 20 years for a husband, I'll wait. And it will hurt, Lord, but I will wait for him, and for him to find me, and for you to bring him to me. But God's just amazing, because he does, in his own way, fast track, even when you think you don't deserve it, and even when you think it's too early or too rushed. He will accelerate it when it's from him, but it will be peaceful, it will be smooth, and it will be with ease. So my ideal husband that I thought in my mind, I wanted someone that was going to be darker in skin, just taller than me, because I'm already quite tall. So I had preferences, but I wasn't really tied to them. But it was like, you know what? Ideally, I would like this. But when I came to that place of being fully surrendered, I laid that all down, and I said, Lord, whatever your will is, whoever you have for me, I trust you. I didn't know that my husband, who God partnered me with, was going to be my husband, until I started getting feelings. They were happening. I just felt really weird, and I started noticing him change a little bit towards me, and little did I know, he said that he would be testing me, because he was praying for a wife, and I'm completely sold out to the Lord and completely surrendered. And so little did each of us know, we're both praying for the same thing. And he would be testing me whenever I would see him, to see if I would come over to him or whatever. And I would just be fumbling my way over there, getting nervous. I'd be looking for him. And it was just like God just started putting these feelings for him. And I was like, God, I just feel like this is too soon. I just feel like I want to give at least a year, that you would heal me, and whatever you want to do with me. But God had other plans, and he accelerated, because I guess he knew the desires of my heart. He truly knows what we need and what we desire, even when we think we know, we don't. I gave it a period of time of 3 months to actually get to know one another. And I wanted to know him on just still as that friendship level, but know him more outside of what I already knew him as, because I wanted to build more of that foundation. And then I said to God, Lord, if he's for me, I need you to show me, and I need you to confirm it with me. Because I don't want to go out of your will, and I don't want to make the decision. I need confirmation. Like, I need you to really show me. We would have moments in our relationship where God started showing us how he was aligning us in different ways. And one thing that I prayed for confirmation previously, in way before all of this, in a different season of mine, I said, God, whoever you have for me, I want to see you confirm it with a white butterfly. And I never saw one with when I was with the person I was with. I would never saw one, and I never did see one in that whole time. But I remember in this period of time of getting to know my husband, I remember us being on the phone, and God instantly brought to my attention and memory what I had prayed for, because as I'm talking to him on the phone, I see a white butterfly just fluttering by right in front of my eyes as I was looking out the window. And I just completely stopped in my tracks, and I was like, I had to tell my husband what had happened and why I'm so shocked, and just told him the story. And that was the very beginning of the little, what people would think of coincidences, but they were just incidences that God was showing us that he was in this. And after I told my husband that, he started getting attacked at work with the butterflies, and there was just, I could see them everywhere just in our relationship. And as we progressed in our relationship, butterflies just became the theme to me. But it wasn't enough. I still asked for confirmation, leaving my husband confused as to why I needed confirmation, because he told me he was the confirmation, just him. But I said, no, I need to hear from the Lord. So at the church we're going to at the time, we were invited to a prophetic encounter night, I guess, to be built up and equipped. And this guy from Sydney, I think, who operates in the prophetic, came to the church, and as soon as he started, he beelined for both of us. And he began to confirm that our relationship, we're a good couple, that we are suited well for together, that we would be the doors and windows for many souls to come through to the kingdom, and that there would be favor on our relationship and on us. Oh, there's a butterfly. There's a butterfly. And he just began to just speak these words to us, but it wasn't what I was praying for, because I needed like exact confirmation that God, like, if he's the one that you want me to marry, you need to tell me. And little did I know, he's praying to God in next to me, for God to confirm our marriage, like our future marriage. Like, God, tell her. And he's thinking this all in his head, so I had no idea. So the guy says everything to us, and then he ends up walking off to go to the next couple. And he just stops dead in his tracks, and he turns around with the microphone, and he just said, and get married. And it was like, and my husband just starts elbowing me. He goes, see, I told you. I was like, yeah, but look, one more confirmation. One more confirmation. But that was enough for me. That solidified the relationship. And I knew in that moment, all right, God, you are in this. You do want me to get married. You do want me to get married to this man. Now, my husband, God has a sense of humor, because he's shorter than me. He is dark hair and handsome, but the height difference, I think God now uses that as a conversation starter. But I felt completely in love with my husband's character, the way his pure relationship with God, his true relationship with God, and the way that he pursued God. It's like God knew that I needed a solid example of what that looked like. And God was using my husband in different parts of us, in the different moments when we were courting, to actually bring healing to different parts of me, particularly my father wounds. So God brought us together on the day of our wedding. We had an amazing encounter where God just put the stamp on it, like, yes, I'm here. My husband's friends didn't believe our butterfly story. And after we had said I do, he was in complete shock as he looked up to the roof, and he saw one big giant butterfly just at the top of the roof. And that for me just was like, God was completely in it from the beginning to now and forever, that his presence has been with us everywhere that we go. And so now, as we came together in our marriage, I embraced 4 extra kids, but my bonus children, and my daughter. We became a blended family, and God has just completely and radically changed my life from not seeing what a healthy relationship looked like, and broken relationships with men and low self-confidence, to now God completely transforming my life and blessing me with an incredible marriage and incredible family, with a big family. So anyone that is going through a situation or has been waiting on that person, that one person that God has for them, their husband or their wife, and has been struggling just to stay encouraged and hopeful, my encouragement is that just come to that place of laying it all down before God. It is a place of complete surrender. And God also has to do a work in us first to prepare us for our husband or our wife. It's not about being perfect, but it's about God dealing with us first. We completely surrender everything at his feet, the marriage, the desires, the wants and needs of looking at someone else to fulfill us, and just trusting that God will, in his timing, whatever way he does it, that he will answer and fulfill the desires of your heart. But the key is complete surrender. And for me, it's the best way that I can describe it is just giving up. Just give up trying to do it on your own. And I just think of everything that you desire in a husband or a wife, putting it all into a box like a gift and handing it over to the Lord and giving it over to him. That's what surrender looks like. And then the next part is waiting on God. So you put your relationship with God first. You serve him, you love him, you worship him, you just follow him. Whatever he wants you to do in this season of singleness, trust him that whatever he's preparing you for, he's already started it. He's just looking for your obedience first and your trust first, and you just being completely sold out to him first. Because at the end of the day, we're going to be standing before him, just you and him. And you're not going to have your husband or your wife. So your husband and your wife are a gift. They're a blessing. They're an addition to your life. But they are not God. And so you have to be sold out to God first, and then allow God to write your love story. Don't try and do it on your own, because it doesn't work. And just allow him to take you through the experience, because he will write your perfect love story more than what you can ever expect and more than what you can ever imagine it to be.
Thank you for watching this video. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe, and also comment down below what stood out to you. I'll see you guys in the next video.